and welcome back to my channel Admayora. I'm Sara, and today we're going to talk about the American literature. This is a very brand new playlist, a brand new course, we can say so. You asked me to talk about the American literature, and so here I am. In my last video we talked about Hemingway, and today we're going to talk about Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe, who is obviously known for his horror stories and for The Raven, but there is much more. He wrote much more than that. So let's start from the beginning. So he was born in 1809 in Boston, and he died in 1849 in Baltimore, so in Maryland. Obviously, he is probably the most famous American short story writer. Not just American, probably one of the most famous short story writers in the whole world. But he was also a poet, he was also a critic, he was also an editor, so he actually did so many things. He excelled academically, despite the attendance, one of the problems of his life, one of his banes, together with drinking, was also gambling, and that was actually a huge problem that created him also a lot of financial troubles. Obviously, he is well known for mystery, for macabre elements in his works, but as I told you before, there is much more than that. There are many scholars who actually defined him as the architect of the short story. And actually, we can say that there are some genres that actually followed his footprints. For example, The Murders in the Rue Morgue, written in 1841. That was, we can say that it initiated the modern detective story. So the modern detective story was actually started by Poe. He also wrote some science fiction as well. Obviously, his tales of horrors were the most famous ones, especially The Raven, written in 1945. We're going to talk about that in detail because it is obviously very, very famous. Edgar Allan Poe was the son of an actress, English-born actress, and an actor, from Baltimore. When his mother died quite soon in Virginia, he moved into the house of John Allan, who probably was his godfather. We don't know that for sure, but probably he was his godfather. So he lived with him and with his childless wife. They also moved for some time. He was sent actually to Scotland and England, which is very important because the kind of education he received was extremely classical. Then he came back and attended university in Virginia with good results, as we said before, and eventually he got engaged and married, and then he moved and started writing poems and selling his poems because actually he needed money because of his gambling problem. Now, the first poems he wrote had a very strong Byronic element, and actually doesn't surprises us a lot because the Byronic intention wasn't so different from the intention of the stories that Poe wrote later. The Byronic poetry is extremely mysterious, it is quite gloomy, it is quite creepy, and the general tone is quite dark, it's Gothic, we could define it like that anyway. For a short period of time, he joined also the army, so he was in the army. Then he left the army and came back writing again poems. Poems that were, well, in all these poems we can actually, and very clear way, we can see the influences he received from Keats, Shelley, Percy B. Shelley, obviously, Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, so other romantic poets, Keats as well as Byron belong to the second generation of romantic poets, while Coleridge belonged to the first generation, but actually his tone, his general atmosphere was extremely similar to the Byronic atmosphere, because actually he talked about nature and about the human fate in a very gloomy way, and he focused on the idea of the sublime. So basically the elements in common are very, very important. Only in 1833 he started actually writing stories like Manuscript Found in a Bottle, this strange title in which manuscript is just shortened to two letters, MS, well, as I said before, together with gambling, also drinking was probably the bane of his life. Sometimes, not very frequently actually, only a few times, he got even intoxicated. Unfortunately, it happened in public, and then many people started to consider him a drug addict. Then other studies that actually were led later, even after his death, explained that probably he wasn't a drug addict at all, but he suffered from a brain lesion. We don't know that for sure, obviously, but this is the most common theory nowadays. Then another work very famous and very important for the American literature and literature in general is his long prose narrative called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. Now, this is especially interesting because in this work we can find the mixture of two very different elements. So the realistic element, the factual element on one side, and the fancy on the other side, fancy atmospheres and fantastic elements on the other side. And the mixture of these two things were actually an inspiration, for example, for Melville's Moby Dick, which was a masterpiece, in English literature. We're going to talk about Melville in my next video. Then he actually started working as a co-editor in Barton's Gentleman's Magazine in Philadelphia, obviously, and at the same time he started writing his stories of supernatural horror that are worldwide famous. The Fall of the House of Usher is probably one of the most famous ones of the period, which is actually the study of a neurotic who was Poe's acquaintance. He wasn't Poe himself, as people used to believe for a very long period of time. That wasn't autobiographical. Then he became editor of Grant's Lady, and then Gentleman's Magazine again after a pause. And in Gentleman's Magazine he published the work I talked about before, the Murders in the Rue Morgue, that initiated the detective stories, as I said before. Another very important and famous work of the time is Gold Bug, and in this period he also started working as a co-editor at the New York Mirror. This is important because in the New York Mirror the story, his most famous story, The Raven, was actually published, okay, for the first time. It was the 29th of January 1845. Then he also worked for other journals, like for example Broadway Journal and Godey's Lady's Book. And we can read something different by him on Godey's Lady's Book, especially some kind of gossipy sketches, ironic descriptions concerning some celebrities or well-known people of the time, which was actually quite strange, okay, if you consider the idea we have of Edgar Allan Poe in general. Then, after his wife's death, he started a few Platonic stories with other women, like for example the poet Sarah Whitman, and a couple of other women that actually helped him financially. Then in 1848 he actually wrote his last work, Eureka. That was a sort of a transcendental explanation of the existence of the universe, so it's sort of an essay, okay. In the last years of his life, he actually found love again, and he also had important friendships with people with whom he shared his love for poetry, actually. And then he died in Baltimore, as I said before. The reasons of his death are still undetermined. Someone says that he died because of his drinking. Other people think it was because of a heart failure or other causes. This is actually not clear and still undetermined. Now, a few words now about The Raven. The Raven, that is his absolutely his most famous work. As I said before, it gave him immediate and an enormous success. It is a narrative poem. It is a narrative poem, very specific genre with a very specific structure. And it is well known for its musicality and we can say the stylized language that he uses. It's all about a very melancholic evocation of a lost love, basically. In fact, it is a stormy December and there is this grieving student that is grieving his obviously lost love, Lenore, and he is visited by this raven that says only one word, and that word is nevermore. The raven repeats this word again and again until it becomes a sort of a very creepy and strange signal, and the guy starts spiraling into madness. Basically, that's what it is about. The very important thing that isn't often mentioned is that this horror story with a psychological interpretation is also full of cultural references, folk references, mythological, religious, classical references, elements, because as I said before, Poe's education started from a very classical study, okay, from a very classical academic perspective. Well, this is all for today. It's all about Edgar Allan Poe. I hope you can remember a little bit more about him than just the raven now, and I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please leave me a like. It is very important for me to receive your feedback, which is always important, and specifically in this case, because starting this new playlist, I'm really curious to know if you are interested in that, and if I should actually focus on this course, and if this is what you want me to do. This is extremely important for me. So if you like my videos, please share them. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it. Okay, and click on the bell to get all the news and to know when new videos are uploaded. I want to remind you that there are many different playlists on my channel, and each playlist is one course. So this is the new American literature playlist. There is an English literature playlist. There's a German literature playlist. This is in German anyway. There is another one in Italian, and then there is an English language playlist. Okay, these are the courses in English, and then there are also others in Italian. So if you see many different videos, don't worry. You can easily go to the page, the main page of the homepage of this channel, and click on playlist, and you can see all the different playlists. You just click on the playlist you're interested in, and you'll have all the lessons in chronological order. So it's very easy, actually. Thank you so very much for following. Thank you for your support, and I hope to see you very soon with American literature and any other videos. Thank you so much, and see you soon.